Hi, it's Angela Egan with Accelerated Learning, and I want to talk to you about a challenge that we have coming up on social media. It is the final stretch before end of the year assessments, and I want to make sure that you feel confident and comfortable to deliver targeted literacy instruction. I know trying new strategies can feel challenging and can be overwhelming at times, but this challenge is a fun and rewarding way to kind of step outside your comfort zone and try something new. By joining this challenge, you will not only have the chance to win some fun prizes, but you will also discover some tools and techniques that can lead to more engaged learners and more students who are achieving grade level success. Through this challenge, you're going to establish powerful literacy structures and routines that are rooted in evidence-based practices. These strategies will ensure that your teaching is focused, impactful, and tailored to meet the unique needs of every single student in your class, driving meaningful learning outcomes for all. Are you up for the challenge? All right, let me tell you a little bit more information. The first challenge is to administer a diagnostic assessment so that you can then identify your students' instructional focus areas for small group instruction or for your intervention block. And the assessment that we're going to use is the Core Phonics Survey. It's easy to use. It takes about 10, maybe 15 minutes per student, depending on the student. And I am going to ask that you try this with at least one student. And I want you to think about one of your reading groups. Um, really think about a group that is performing below grade level. And I want you to administer the assessment on one student, at least one student in that group. If you can administer it on everyone in that group, that would be really helpful to make sure that that group is really focusing on their instructional goals. And then we will analyze that data, which will be step 2. But first, let's talk about the first step here. Here's the Core Phonics. It is available in Spanish and English. I will attach this file so that you have access to both copies. As I mentioned, this can be used as a screener and also as outcome measures, providing, it provides data about student growth and mastery at the end of an instructional period. As a diagnostic, it can indicate whether or not a student needs instruction in selected phonics concepts or if further assessments may be needed. This can also be used to track progress from earlier skills to grade level mastery. It's not meant to replace screening and progress monitoring tests such as those from Ames Web or DIBELS, but this is an additional assessment that you can do to ensure that your instruction is really targeted and your groups are really focusing on the concepts and skills that your students need. Okay, so let's take a look at the different sections of this assessment. We'll look back at the scores afterwards and data. But first you have an alphabet skills and letter sounds section and a reading and decoding skills section. I highly suggest that you administer both parts to your students, no matter what grade level they're in, because you want to ensure that they have mastered the letter names and consonant sounds, as well as the long vowel and short vowel sounds. Because if there are any gaps in this section, you are going to need to make sure you know that, so then you can incorporate some of those skills into their daily repetition and review in their groups. And then the second part are the reading and decoding skills. There are several different components. You have short vowels and CVC words, consonant blends with short vowels, digraphs, and trigraphs are control vowels, which all kind of fall in that beyond CVC range. And then you have your long vowel spellings and variant vowels, which fall under the long vowel range. And then you have your low frequency vowel and consonant spellings, which would also be incorporated within that long vowel unit. And then you have your multisyllabic words. For the assessments, for the letter names, uppercase, lowercase, and the consonant sounds, you are going to ask your students to tell you the names or the sounds of the letters. If they cannot name 3 or more consecutive letters, then you're going to ask them to look at all of the letters and tell you which sounds that they do know. If they do not know a sound or a letter name, you can circle that And you want to make sure that you write what they do say above the letter. It's really important that you understand the letters or sounds that they're confusing, because once again, that's information that we're going to need to ensure that we're closing gaps. And we have to incorporate those sounds into our sound fluency and our sound dictation drills, which we will get into later on. You also want to ensure that they know their vowel sounds, their short and long vowel sounds. So once again, you're going to ask them to tell you the sounds of each letter. If they name the letter, you can count it as the long vowel sound. And then you can ask them to tell you another sound for that letter. And they should name the short vowel sound. You have 2 lines here to check mark, to put an L for long vowel sound and an S for short vowel sound if they get that correct. And then you can just log how many they had correct and how many were incorrect. And just once again, if they say something different, just make sure you jot that down and put it right above the letters so you know exactly what they said. And then we get to the reading and decoding section. And since we're using this as a screener, I would highly suggest that you move through all of the components unless you notice that they fall within that intensive range. So for short vowels and CVC words and all of the other components, you're going to have real words, 2 rows of real words, and then you have pseudo words. The purpose of having those pseudo words there is because you want to know if your students are recognizing the code, right? Our goal is to teach them the code, and we want to assure that when they're looking at unfamiliar words, they're able to apply that code. So that information is really helpful. When we talk about analyzing the data, we're going to be looking for trends within this word reading portion of the assessment. And just tell them pseudo words are not real words. So they shouldn't try to make it or turn it into a real word. And as I mentioned, so we're using this as a screener. We want to see what they do know and what they're able to do. You want to go through each part until they fall into that intensive range. So you have each section. If you scroll down, you have the student copy and the student materials. And then if we go back up to the top and we take a look at what all those numbers mean. For the 15 item parts, the parts with 15 items, students have to score at least a 14 or above in order for it to be benchmark. The only item that is 24 is the multisyllabic section, where they need to have 21 or more to be in the benchmark range. If they fall into that strategic range, 10 to 13 or 15 to 20, depending on the grade level, you're going to think about incorporating some of those skills and some of those patterns within the review section of their instruction. That may be part of their sound fluency, their sound dictation, or their pattern review. And then if they fall in that intensive range, either 0 to 9 or 0 to 14, they're going to need some more intensive support with those foundational skills. And so we will talk about how we analyze this data towards the end of this week, but your goal for right now is just to administer this assessment. And that is going to be your first step in the challenge. Once you are done administering the assessment, if you want to share, use the hashtag AcceleratedLearning and share a page of your assessment, or maybe just some feedback how it went. Please do not share any photographs, any student names. If you do not have social media, you can just email me your thoughts or a photograph of the assessment, and then I can also use that information to help you as you're analyzing the data. But the goal is just to try it, and then we're going to move from there. It's going to be a layered approach. So what that means is each week I'm going to be sending you a new challenge. And then as you learn a new challenge, you're going to start to incorporate that within your instruction. So by the end of the challenge, you will have incorporated all of the essential components of a small group lesson into your own small group instruction. And so you will have a solid understanding of what a targeted small group should look like. And then you'll be able to use that information to support you and your students in the classroom to ensure that when you're planning, you are being intentional and you are making sure that your groups are really targeted and focused so that your students are getting what they need in the classroom. If you have any questions, feel free to email me or reach out to me. I would love to chat with you, and I hope you join the challenge.